What if I told you that you could quit your job tomorrow, never work another day in your life, and live comfortably with just $500,000 in the bank? What if I told you that while everyone else is grinding away, chasing their first million or second million, you could be sitting on a beach somewhere, completely financially free with a fraction of what they think they need? Most people would call that impossible. Like, they'd say you're dreaming, that $500,000 isn't nearly enough to sustain a lifetime of not working. But here's the thing that might shock you. They're completely wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you today. My name is Nick, and I help people understand how simple financial strategies can create extraordinary results. If you're tired of the traditional retirement advice that tells you to work until you're 70 and hope for the best, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this information changes how you think about money. Here's something that will blow your mind. According to recent surveys, most Americans believe they need at least $2 million to retire comfortably. Some think they need $5 million or more. Meanwhile, there are people right now living better lives than most millionaires, and they're doing it with just $500,000 wisely invested. The difference isn't luck or some secret strategy that only the wealthy know about. It's understanding a fundamental principle that most people completely ignore. Before we dive into the specifics, let me ask you something. When you picture financial freedom, what do you see? Maybe you imagine luxury cars, designer clothes, and massive houses. Perhaps you think about first-class flights and five-star restaurants every night. Or maybe, just maybe, you picture something simpler. Waking up without an alarm clock, spending your days however you choose, and never having to worry about making rent or paying bills. Here's where most people get it completely backwards. They think wealth is about accumulating stuff, when in reality, wealth is about accumulating choices. And choices don't require nearly as much money as most people think. The secret lies in understanding something that sounds almost too simple to be true. If you can generate enough passive income to cover your basic living expenses, you never have to work again. It's not about having millions sitting in your account. It's about having enough money working for you so that you don't have to work for money. Let's break down the mathematics, because this is where it gets interesting. Take that $500,000 and put it into conservative fixed income investments. We're talking about bonds, high yield savings accounts, and other low risk options that consistently generate returns. With these types of investments, you can reasonably expect about 5% annual returns. That might not sound exciting, but let's see what it actually means for your life. 5% of $500,000 equals $25,000 per year. That's over $2,000 every single month, generated without you lifting a finger. You're not spending your principal amount. You're simply living off the interest that your money earns. Think about that for a moment. Your money is literally working harder than most people do at their jobs. Now, $25,000 per year might not sound like a fortune, especially if you're used to earning significantly more, but here's what changes the entire equation. You're no longer trading your time for money. Every single day belongs to you. You can wake up when you want, go where you want, and do what you want. No boss, no commute, no meetings that could have been emails. But wait, because it gets even better. If you're willing to accept slightly more risk and invest part of that $500,000 into the stock market through diversified funds, your potential returns increase substantially. A balanced portfolio that includes both stocks and bonds can reasonably generate 8 to 9% annually over the long term. Let's use 8.5% as our conservative estimate. 8.5% of $500,000 equals $42,500 per year. That's over $3,500 every month in passive income. Suddenly, we're talking about a lifestyle that goes well beyond just covering the basics. You could travel, pursue hobbies, or even support causes you care about, all while your nest egg continues to grow. Here's where this strategy becomes truly powerful. Most people approach retirement completely backwards. They think they need to accumulate massive amounts of money and then gradually spend it down until they die. But what if you never had to spend your principal at all? What if your money could last forever because you're only living off the returns it generates? This is the difference between thinking like a consumer and thinking like an investor. Consumers spend money and it disappears. Investors use money to generate more money. When you have $500,000 generating consistent returns, you're not just financially independent. you're financially immortal, your money will outlive you, and it can even be passed down to future generations. But here's the part that most financial advisors won't tell you because it doesn't involve selling you expensive products or services. The biggest obstacle to achieving this level of financial independence isn't earning more money, it's spending less money. The person who can live comfortably on $3,000 per month is infinitely wealthier than the person who needs $10,000 per month to maintain their lifestyle, regardless of how much either of them has in the bank. This is where we need to get brutally honest about what you actually need versus what you think you want. Do you really need a car payment that costs more than some people's rent? Do you need to eat out 5 times per week? Do you need the latest gadgets, designer clothes, and all the other stuff that marketers have convinced you represents success? I'm not saying you should live like a monk or deprive yourself of everything enjoyable. What I'm saying is that most people are spending money on things that don't actually make them happier, and that spending is the only thing standing between them and complete financial freedom. Consider this scenario. You're single, you own your home outright, and your monthly expenses, including property taxes, insurance, utilities, food, and entertainment, total $2,500, with a $500,000 investment portfolio generating 8% annually. You're bringing in over $3,500 per month. Not only are you covering all your expenses, but you're also saving an additional $1,000 every month without working at all. Even if you're supporting a family, the numbers can still work if you're strategic about your lifestyle choices. Maybe you live in a lower cost area where your money stretches further. Maybe you've paid off your mortgage early, eliminating what's typically most people's largest monthly expense. Maybe you've learned to find joy in simple pleasures rather than expensive ones. The beauty of this approach is that it scales with your situation. If you can accumulate more than $500,000, your passive income increases proportionally. If you can reduce your monthly expenses below what your investments generate, you create an even larger buffer for unexpected costs or lifestyle improvements. But here's where most people sabotage themselves before they even start. They look at $500,000 and think it's impossible to save that much money. They get overwhelmed by the number and give up before they begin. What they're missing is that building wealth isn't about making one huge leap. It's about taking consistent steps in the right direction over time. If you can save just $2,000 per month, you'll reach that $500,000 target in about 18 years. That might sound like forever when you're starting out, but think about where you were 18 years ago. Time passes whether you're building wealth or not. The question is whether you'll look back 18 years from now wishing you had started today. And here's the thing that makes this even more achievable than most people realize. You don't need to save $2,000 from day one. Maybe you start with $500 per month and gradually increase that amount as your income grows. Maybe you get serious about cutting expenses and discover you can save more than you ever thought possible. Maybe you pick up a side hustle specifically dedicated to funding your freedom account. The point is, this isn't some fantasy reserved for trust fund babies or lottery winners. This is a mathematical certainty for anyone willing to prioritize their future self over their current impulses. But let me share something that might make you laugh or cry, depending on your perspective. Most people spend more money on their cars over their lifetime than it would take to achieve complete financial independence. Think about that. The average person buys a new car every 6 years, takes out loans with interest, pays for insurance, maintenance, and gas. Over a 40-year period, they're easily spending $600,000 or more just on transportation. Meanwhile, they're complaining that they can't afford to save for retirement. Here's another one that'll make you question everything. The average American spends over $3,000 per year on coffee, restaurants, and convenience foods. That's $3,000 that disappears forever, providing nothing but temporary satisfaction. If that same $3,000 were invested annually at 8% returns, it would grow to over $800,000 over 30 years. I'm not saying you should never enjoy a good meal or a decent cup of coffee. What I'm saying is that most people are unconsciously choosing temporary pleasure over permanent freedom, and they don't even realize they're making that choice. But here's where this strategy gets really interesting, and it's something that traditional financial advice completely misses. Once you have that $500,000 foundation generating passive income, you're no longer desperate. You're not trapped in a job you hate because you need the paycheck. You're not making financial decisions from a place of fear or scarcity. This changes everything about how you approach opportunities. Maybe you've always wanted to start a business, but you were too afraid to give up your steady paycheck. When your investments are covering your basic expenses, you can afford to take that risk. Maybe you want to go back to school or learn a new skill. When you're not worried about paying rent, you can invest in yourself without the crushing pressure of immediate returns. Or maybe you just want to travel and see the world while you're still young enough to enjoy it. When your money is working for you, you're not postponing your dreams until some mythical retirement age when you might be too old or too sick to actually live them. This is what real wealth looks like. It's not about showing off or impressing other people. It's about having choices. It's about being able to say no to things that don't serve you and yes to things that do. It's about designing your life according to your values rather than your bank account balance. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What about inflation? Won't my expenses increase over time, making that passive income less valuable? It's a fair question, and it's actually built into the strategy if you do it correctly. If you're generating 8 to 9% returns annually and only spending 6 to 7% of your portfolio's value each year, the remaining growth helps your investments keep pace with inflation. Your principal amount gradually increases, which means your passive income gradually increases too. You're not just maintaining your purchasing power, you're actually growing it over time. Plus, there's something else most people forget to factor into these calculations. Social Security benefits. Now, I'm not saying you should count on Social Security being exactly the same when you're eligible to collect it, but even with potential changes, it's likely to provide some level of additional income that makes your financial picture even more comfortable. The average Social Security benefit is currently around $1,900 per month. For a married couple, that could be close to $4,000 per month in additional guaranteed income. When you combine that with the passive income from your investments, you're looking at a very comfortable lifestyle indeed. But here's the part that really separates successful wealth builders from everyone else. They understand that this isn't just about reaching a number and then coasting. It's about developing the habits and mindset that make financial independence inevitable. When you're focused on building that $500,000 foundation, you naturally become more intentional about your spending. You start distinguishing between things you actually need and things you just want in the moment. You begin to see through the marketing messages that are constantly trying to separate you from your money. You develop what I call immunity to lifestyle inflation. Most people, as soon as they start earning more money, immediately start spending more money. They upgrade their apartment, buy a fancier car, eat at more expensive restaurants. Their expenses rise to meet their income, which means they never actually get ahead. They're just running faster on the same treadmill. But when you're building toward financial independence, every dollar has a purpose. You're not depriving yourself of everything enjoyable, but you're making conscious choices about where your money goes. You understand that every dollar you don't spend on something temporary is a dollar that can work for you permanently. This mindset shift is probably more valuable than the money itself. It means that even if something unexpected happens to your investments, you have the knowledge and discipline to rebuild. You're not just wealthy in terms of your bank account, you're wealthy in terms of your financial intelligence and self-control. And speaking of unexpected events, let's address the elephant in the room. What about market crashes? What if your investments lose value right when you need the income most? These are legitimate concerns, and they're exactly why diversification and conservative withdrawal rates are so important. If you're only withdrawing 6 to 7% of your portfolio's value annually, and you're diversified across different types of investments, you can weather most market storms without touching your principal. During tough years, your account balance might decrease, but you're still generating income. During good years, your account balance grows, giving you a buffer for the inevitable downturns. This is vastly different from the traditional retirement approach, where people slowly spend down their savings and hope they don't run out of money before they run out of life. When you're living off investment returns rather than depleting your principal, temporary market volatility becomes much less scary. The truth is, most people will never achieve this level of financial freedom, and it has nothing to do with their ability to earn money. It has everything to do with their relationship with money. They've been conditioned to believe that more stuff equals more happiness when the opposite is usually true. I've seen people making 6-figure salaries who are completely broke because they're spending 7 figures on their lifestyle. Meanwhile, I know teachers and mechanics who are quietly building wealth because they understand the difference between looking rich and being rich. Spoiler alert, they're not the same thing. Here's something that might sting a little, but it needs to be said. If you can't live comfortably on $42,000 per year, the problem isn't that you don't have enough money. The problem is that you've lost control of your spending. You've allowed your expenses to expand beyond what actually makes you happy, and you're now trapped in a cycle of earning money just to spend money. But here's the good news. Unlike your neighbor who just bought a boat he can't afford to impress people he doesn't like, you can change this starting today. Every subscription you cancel, every impulse purchase you avoid, every time you choose to cook at home instead of ordering takeout, you're buying back pieces of your future freedom. And let me tell you something about freedom that nobody talks about. It's not just about having money. It's about having time. Time to pursue relationships that matter, or time to develop skills you're passionate about, time to contribute to causes you care about, time to just sit quietly and think without someone demanding your attention every 5 minutes. When you're financially independent with $500,000 working for you, you're not just escaping the 9-to-5 grind, you're escaping the entire system that treats human beings like productivity machines. You're reclaiming your most precious resource, which isn't money, it's your life itself. Now, I'm not going to pretend this path is easy. It requires discipline that most people simply don't have. It means saying no to things that everyone around you is saying yes to. It means being comfortable with delayed gratification while living in a culture that worships instant everything. It means being okay with people thinking you're weird because you drive a 10-year-old car and live in a modest home. But here's what makes it worth it. Every month that passes, you're getting closer to complete financial independence, while everyone else is getting deeper into debt. Every year that passes, your money is working harder for you while everyone else is working harder for their money. Every decade that passes, you're becoming more free while everyone else is becoming more trapped. The $500,000 strategy isn't just about retiring early, though that's certainly one option. It's about having choices. Maybe you love your work and want to keep doing it, but now you're doing it because you choose to, not because you have to. Maybe you want to start a nonprofit organization or write a book or teach kids or travel the world documenting endangered species. When your basic needs are covered by passive income, work becomes something you do for fulfillment rather than survival. And let me tell you, there's a massive difference between those two motivations. One leads to stress, burnout, and resentment. The other leads to creativity, joy, and purpose. Here's the final piece of this puzzle that ties everything together. Building wealth isn't just about the money you save, it's about the person you become in the process. The discipline required to consistently invest for years teaches you patience. The delayed gratification teaches you to think long term. The focus on needs versus wants teaches you what actually matters in life. These lessons extend far beyond your bank account. They affect your relationships, your health, your sense of purpose, and your overall satisfaction with life. You become someone who makes intentional decisions rather than reactive ones. You become someone who controls money instead of letting money control you. And here's something beautiful about this approach. It's contagious in the best possible way. When the people around you see that you're genuinely happier with less stuff and more freedom, they start questioning their own choices. Maybe your friends stop trying to keep up with expensive social activities and start appreciating simpler pleasures. Maybe your family members begin thinking differently about their own financial futures. You become living proof that there's another way to live. A way that prioritizes experiences over possessions, relationships over status symbols, and freedom over the illusion of security that comes from a regular paycheck. So here's my challenge to you. Stop making excuses about why this won't work for you. Stop telling yourself that $500,000 is impossible to save. Stop believing that you need millions to be financially free. Start where you are, with what you have, right now. Maybe that means setting up an automatic transfer of $50 per month into an investment account. And maybe it means canceling subscriptions you don't use and redirecting that money toward your freedom fund. Maybe it means having an honest conversation with yourself about what you actually need versus what you think you want. The path to financial independence isn't complicated, but it is challenging. It requires you to think differently, act differently, and live differently than the majority of people around you. But the reward isn't just money in the bank. The reward is a life lived on your own terms, with time as your most abundant resource and freedom as your daily reality. $500,000 can buy you complete financial independence if you're smart about it. The question isn't whether it's possible. The question is whether you're willing to do what it takes to make it happen. Your future self is counting on the decision you make today.